Hi everyone, Andrew here. This week's video about testimonies. Um, I'm pulling, I think, my project from the readings that we had, particularly the one about how to read movies. I really liked the question, "What happens when?" that we came across in that reading. So for this project, I would do videos. It would be a video series as opposed to a live testimony. And the second question would be, God in the world, and then kind of linking those two things together. God in the world, what happens when, and then fill in the blank. And I would probably, focus on questions, perhaps some things that would be considered hot topics or controversial, or just things that people are wrestling with right now. I mean, we read the article about contemporary and with time, and there's a sense that things that we wrestle with now are unique in some respects, but in other respects, they're really not all that unique. So, God in the world, what happens when, you're living with mental illness, bipolar, depression, or addiction, or in the wake of a really difficult decision about end of life issues with family members, or health of parent, or abortion issues, or even questions of sexuality or gender, all those kinds of things that that are somewhat particular, but then they're also not all that particular to our time. And so I would want to invite people who are willing to be kind of in the middle of those questions, or kind of just on the heels of having had something happen or a decision that they made in response to something, kind of chronicle them and their journey over the course of, 6 months would probably be short. I would like to do about a year, and interview them at regular intervals. So what happens when, and where is God in this, as opposed to the kind of at least a testimony that I've been most exposed to, which is, this thing happened a long time ago. God did this, and it got fixed or corrected this, and now it's all good. That kind of, I had a problem, God rushed in and fixed it, and now I live happily ever after. I want to get a bit more of a real-time thing, because at least for me, when I heard, or even when I still hear those, I think, was it always that clear? I know from my own life, when I'm in the middle of those things, it's the mixture of hope and despair and frustration and anger, and what I want from God even changes, what I want God to do, and how I want God to react, and how I want other people to react, and how I want myself to respond as compared to how I actually do respond. And where is God in that? And what does that look like? What does that mean? So I think that's the project, kind of in a nutshell. I think this will work well in probably thinking large suburban megachurch, or perhaps inner city multi-ethnic church. I think in those areas, I'm probably more familiar with those than perhaps a Presbyterian church in Cairo. I think in inner city churches, there's a lot. I think metropolitan area like LA, New York, places like that. And there's just a lot of stories in a really small area. There's a lot of different backgrounds and perspectives and worldviews and circumstances that kind of come together in one place. And that's not to say those things don't happen in other places. Those are just the ones that I can kind of imagine this working well in. I think what this would open up for people is the space to acknowledge the difficulty of going through or just after a painful or difficult decision or something not working the way you wanted it to, or something along those lines, and um, getting a sense of it's not necessarily a simple recipe of this happened, God did this, God did that, and now we're happy once again. I think for a lot of people that there's a legitimacy to that, but I think there's also a lot of times but that doesn't seem to be my experience of that. It doesn't seem to be my experience of how God was with me in something that was difficult or hard or traumatic or life changing. I think it would open up. I don't like to use the word authenticity. I think maybe it's overused, but at least a sense of I can let down my guard that perhaps I'm not going through this spiritually enough, or I'm not going through this holy enough, or okay, and it's okay to be confused. It's okay to be angry at God. It's okay to be angry at God in one moment and then, be thankful, or the process of learning to be thankful in the midst of also being angry, or, all those kinds of things that we go through in these difficult times. So I think it would open that kind of thing up. Again, I think in terms of shutting things down, I think some people would possibly see it as exploitative, kind of putting people out there for shock value, or people may or may not agree with the decisions that some of the folks who agreed to do the videos made. They may not agree with how they handled it or what they did, or they might not think that their decisions or behaviors reflect Christian values. But I hope they would take the opportunity to listen, and they don't have to change their mind necessarily, but to see other people's difficulties, or even good times, the good times in the midst of the difficulties, and ask kind of their own questions, not necessarily looking to reinforce their already held beliefs or answers, or give them new answers or easy answers, just raising good questions and watching what happens when. So I think that's what I would do for this project for this week. So yeah, thanks for listening, and have a great day, guys.